What's up, guys? Above average here. We're going to do a tier list video. It's going to be post Phantom Nightmare. We're going to have, the Year of Fire coming up. So, pretty exciting. This is going to be my opinion, of course. The way that I view decks. I'm going to start rating them, and I'm going to kind of put them in their tier slot and show how many of these decks can top and if they could do well in the format in high events, or if they're good for locals, or if they're just casual decks. So starting off, we have Orchist. Orchist Runic, Orchist Bestial, Horus, anything like that, I think is a solid tier 2 deck. I wouldn't really put it at tier 1. It just has too many weaknesses, and it does seem a little fair. I'm not saying that it can't do well. I think, of course, it could do well, but if it played against like 1,000 matches against the decks that are going to be placed above this deck, uh, percent wise, I don't think it would do too well. So I think it's a solid tier 2 deck. You could take it for locals and definitely win locals, do well at a regional. But for a big event, I think maybe 1 to 2 slots at max. Centurion, also think is a tier 2 deck. I will place them in order. I think Centurion is very good. I think it has the consistency for a long tournament. I just think what it does kind of just gets stopped by almost everything right now. Almost every single utility card could stop its plays. So that's its weakness. It's very powerful, if it goes unchecked, right? If you don't open up a utility card and you open up only engine, it can be really hard to win those games. But I think it's a very solid tier 2 deck. It can definitely compete, and has a lot of room for non-engine. So in a format that you can play a lot of hand traps, I think Centurion could be really good actually. Labyrinth. So Labyrinth, now we got transaction rollback. A lot of powerful trap cards as well. I think Labyrinth is all the way up at point 5. Obviously, no deck is going to be tier 0, but I think this is going to be one of the best decks you can play. Extremely safe option. Everyone's going to be playing a lot of hand traps to prepare for, the fire decks. So by you playing a deck like Labyrinth, you could just set 5, pass, and that could always get you there. The deck is like hyper consistent in my opinion. Playing the furnitures, it's a very good pick, and it definitely is going to get a lot of tops in the upcoming events. Manium, I think Manium is a solid tier 1 deck. Again, keep in mind a lot of people are going to play hand traps. Droll is expected to be really good, which personally I don't think so. But yeah, if Manium players could, play talents, play cards to play through hand traps, they could do very well. And it is a scary deck, right? The deck kind of puts you on do you have it almost every single game, and you need to have an answer for their pushes. If you don't, you auto lose. If they full combo you, they set up way too many negates. Uh, Tier limit. I think tier limit is also a tier 1 deck. There's some cute stuff you can do with transaction rollback. But I think the deck is, even with the Shizu cards kind of banned, the deck still is really, really good. Again, no hand trap really hits this deck, which is like kind of its pro. You need to time them, and like if you hand trap them, they could kind of always just push through it. I think it's just a very solid pick. Still, if you want to play that type of deck. Salomon Great. I'm gonna put Salomon Great in the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse section. The deck just seems a little too fair right now. I think he could do well at locals, maybe even top a regional, or maybe even get a spot at a YCS. I'm not saying it can't, but I think it just requires too many pieces, and even if your whole combo resolves, it seems a little underwhelming for what the other decks do right now. Silent Force or Voiceless Voice. I think this is going to be a tier 2 deck for now. I think the cards are broken, but we'll see how it shapes up in the format. I've seen it being played online. I see what it could do, but its strategy going into what the best decks and the most represented decks are going to be, it seems like it's not going to be able to compete as much as the other decks. So now getting onto the fire decks, Rescue Ace. I think Rescue Ace is going to be, one of the top decks. A lot of people are going to play it. It's going to be very heavily represented. Um, but I do want to say, although the deck is very powerful, I think the deck has too many engine requirements. Like, although it's very good, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable going into an event with like 5, 6 cards that I for sure don't want to open up, right? Even though they're not bricks, you kind of like you're hoping your other cards, you're playing with a lot less cards in your hand pretty much, and it's still going to be a really really good deck, top contender for sure. But I definitely don't consider it the best deck, or I don't think it's going to be the best deck. Fire Kings, I think Fire Kings go above Rescue Ace. I think Fire Kings are obviously going to be really really powerful. A very scary deck, hyper consistent. You're gonna play every single game. It's really nitty and gritty, and I kind of like that about the deck. Kind of makes me want to play the deck. But it's the crackback of this deck is kind of insane, and you get to play Curran, which Curran is one of the best fire cards in the game. Then Pure Snake Eyes. I think Pure Snake Eyes is definitely going to be at the top contending spots. They can play a bunch of utility cards. It's very consistent. It's gonna do pretty much the same thing every game, but the fact that it's so nimble, it can play through a lot. People think Droll is gonna be good against the deck, but people are gonna quickly find out that even through Droll, they're gonna completely full combo you. Yeah, I think this is gonna be probably one of the best decks, if not the best deck. Volcanics. Snake guys and stuff like that. So again, this is my tier list video, and in my opinion, the way that I, build decks and the way I view decks and the way I categorize them, the way I think a deck is good. Personally, I think Volcanics is going to be right about here. Realistically, I think it's for sure going to be better than Rescue Ace, and guaranteed better than Fire King. Um, I have my spice that I'm building, and I think when people start diving deep and they realize what the volcanic cards give to the Snake Eye deck, they're gonna start implementing the cards. I think as time passes, people are gonna realize how good these cards are, and they're gonna start playing them in their Snake Eye deck. But yeah, this is where I place it. I don't think it's gonna be like the absolute best deck. I think there's a lot of figuring out to do, but which is a good thing. I like how there's a lot of exploring to do. Now with the shifter decks, oh man, Flunderies. I would put Flunderies here. Um, we've got another 3 of like Searcher card, but the deck loses to exactly what it loses to, right? Like even if the deck completely resolves everything that it wants to do, it kind of gets cooked by the gas of other decks right now. It not having barrier statue, you kind of need to rely on like unsearchable broken cards. Like you need to rely on seeing the Featherstorm card, right? The trap card, or like seeing Shifter. If you don't see those cards, you're having a pretty rough time, even if your whole combo resolves. But again, I definitely don't underestimate this deck. I think this deck is crazy, but keep in mind everyone's playing Droll in their side deck main deck, so it's gonna be a bit tough for Flunderies. But still, one card does everything for them, so that's kind of crazy. I think what is it called? Vanquish Soul. Vanquish Soul is not a bad deck by any means. I just don't think it has enough pushes right now, and I don't think it could compete against the other top decks in the format. Goaty. I think Goaty is going to be a solid tier 2 shifter deck. The deck can play shifter. It has some neat combos. There's you can play runics with the deck, so that's pretty cool. But we'll see what people start cooking. I've seen what it does online. I know what it's capable of, and it actually is pretty scary. I'm not gonna lie. Kashtira. So look, I think Konami brought back Unicorn because they want to keep some decks in check, and they want people to be like, they want Shifter to kind of be in the format to keep, to balance out things. And I think Kashtira is definitely the best Shifter deck that's going to be out there, and I think it definitely deserves a top spot. I think it's going to be between here and here. I actually think like this is going to be the problem, right? Like you don't know if you're going to face against everyone's going to be prepared for the fire decks because they're going to be the most represented decks. But then once you go against Kashtira, you're just not going to have the cards you need to win against that matchup. And I think Kashtira is going to have a very easy time actually against those decks. Them playing, of course, Shifter, but whatever. That's only 33% of the time they're going to have that, right? But cards like Birth are amazing against these type of decks, and like the deck is pretty consistent. It fits a lot of utility cards, but not only that, it plays really well around hand traps, and that's what everyone's going to be playing. So I think Kashtira is definitely going to take a top spot in the format. Earth Machine, Infinite Tracks, Machina, I think is in the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse section. I, I really love this deck. I really do, but the deck needs support. Like, to be honest, I wish I could play this deck, but the fact that it plays hard bricks that you definitely can't afford to open really hurts the deck. If they didn't have that, it would definitely go up a few ranks, but the fact that it has so many engine requirements and you know, if everything resolves and you get to play your turn, it's just not enough to beat the best decks right now. Uh, Unchained, I think Unchained is a solid tier one deck. I think you could take this deck to like regionals and win a regionals. Like the deck fits a good amount of utility cards. Sherbar going to one, it hurts the deck. I'm not gonna lie, it does. But it could get you there. The deck can play through hand traps. It's not like it can't. And since a lot of people are gonna be playing hand traps, it's gonna be really good. It also doesn't have a hard time against Shifter. To be honest, like people think it does, but it doesn't really. It's not going to get hit by like Droll as much, the cards that are going to be in the format. So I think you could take Unchained and you could do really well at events if you play really well too. I'm sorry. I forgot these. Oh, Chimera cards. I think the Chimera cards are good. I think they could go up here somewhere. The cards have one card combos, but they get hit by hand traps. The utility cards, they actually can't fit that many utility cards. They can play Super Poly. That's pretty good. But obviously so can the other decks, and I just don't think it does enough to be to beat the best decks consistently, right? Like you can cheat a few wins here and there. Maybe you rip the right card out of their hand, and like you have 2 to 3 disruptions, but they could easily just have Bonfire after they've exhausted their whole hand. They could just have Bonfire, and that could get them there. So yeah, I definitely don't think it's a good pick going into like a YCS or anything. Now, I put two different runic categories. One is going to be pure runic because a lot of people tend to play that like stun runic. I see it a lot online and even in person. And there's going to be runic variants. I think pure runic, stun runic. We had Gozen Rivalry Band, well limited, and I don't think it's a good deck anymore. I don't think you can play this consistently and do well. It's good in OCG because they have Maxi and people want to play something like stun, so it could be good against like people that play Maxi and stuff like that. But it's just not good. I don't think it's a good choice for the TCG. Then any runic variant, I would put in high tier one, maybe even above these decks. But it depends what variant you're playing, right? I think like the Quem runic builds, those are really cool. I think those are really good. I think runic decks are going to be amazing. Banishing certain combo pieces, like maybe you banish their populace, maybe you banish cards like that, could be really good. It could be really good against Fire Kings, and you basically whatever deck you put it in, you're giving the deck an alternative win condition, and that's really cool. So I think runic decks are definitely up there. They could definitely get a few tops at an event. Pearly, I would also put at tier one. Uh, I think this deck is solid. This deck is amazing. I just think it has a problem with time. As Joshua Schmidt mentioned, very solid deck you could play. Personally, not a choice that I would play. I just hate how you have to go so minus. You have to go so out of your way to out a big monster, and I like playing big cards in my deck. This is like Dragon Link and any like Bestial Runic deck. I think very solid choice. And you can kind of see a pattern, like the way that Konami uh, is going right now. Like there's a lot of solid choices that you could play and you could do well with. Like there's no deck that you feel like you have absolutely no chance of winning, or like your opponent has a clear advantage over you, right? I think if you're playing Runic Stun and your opponent's playing like pure Snake Eyes, yeah, I feel like he has a deck advantage. But you could take any one of these from tier three and up. You could take these deck and you could do well with them, right? And I think that's really cool. You don't have to play the most expensive deck to do well. Any type of branded deck, I think, could be tier two. Again, people are going to play a lot of hand traps. Although Imperm and Veilers aren't like the best, a well-timed hand trap or, just having the going second cards talents could really hurt this deck. And people do play Bestials, people play Runics, and that could really hurt you. So I don't think this is the best option. Sword Soul, I think, is a good tier 3 deck. It's a solid deck, pretty consistent. If you could fit a lot of utility cards, which is cool, I think you could take it to an event and you could do well with it for sure. It's just going to be hard to win. I think like a regional or like a big event, over 6-7 rounds, just because like even though you're pretty much getting to the same end board, or you go into your Shisha blackout. A lot of decks can clear that now, but and I think not variance is gonna rule in your opponent's favor because of how many powerful blowout cards there are going second, and if they're also playing a lot of hand traps, it could kind of hurt you if you don't have enough pushes. And Sword Soul usually have 1 to 2 pushes going first and 3 pushes going second, right? And with people playing a lot of hand traps, more often than not, your combo is not going to resolve going first. Sprite, I think Sprite is again tier 3, probably better than Sword Soul to play. Sprite is really good. I mean, it's not a bad deck by any means. I just don't think I think it's just a little too fair, and I think that's the problem with every like tier 2 and below deck. They have that like um they don't have that unfair feeling to them, unlike the other decks that are placed a little higher. And then plants, I think, is tier 3. We're gonna see how it shapes up. I've seen like the new plant cards that are coming out, and I think those are really really cool. I've seen a lot of people cooking with those decks. It's actually kind of scary. If they win the dice roll, I just think the deck is gonna be a little weird going second, and going into an established board, going into hand traps, it's gonna have a pretty tough time, I think. But not to say that the deck can't do well or is not good, but we'll see how it shapes up. So this is my tier list video. I think we're going to see a lot of fire, so be prepared for that. We'll see how people start playing hand traps, then start rotating to maybe going second cards, utility cards. We'll see what cards are going to be good, but I think the top 3 decks, in my opinion, are going to be Pure Snake Eyes, Labyrinth, and Kashtira. People called me crazy when I said Kashtira was good, but call me crazy again, man. I don't care. I don't care. We're gonna do well. We're gonna do well with cash. So that's it for my 2024 tier list video.